Welcome to a special mailbag episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, where I, Adam, am sitting down with one of our Patreon subscribers, Andri, who has generously become one of our patrons of Metallic Great Worm tier. And that means that he's able to sit down and record an episode with us, and he's decided that today we're going to be discussing and building some random tables. Now, I think we actually talked about the fact that we were going to do this in the last episode you and I recorded, Andri.
Yeah.
But why do you have trouble? You said then I struggle with random tables. What's the big hiccup for you?
I'm not sure, honestly. I think it's a mix of getting everything into one, and then the difference between tables, and like because you're not just only doing combat encounters or random tables for combat, because this fucking list you gave me has 12 different types of tables.
And
which is more than which is more than I thought was possible. And then there's the different scenarios for example, combat encounters, like for each environment, or whether it's day and night. It's just it's so much. And like I've once, I think, managed to get like a somewhat of a random encounter table. Fuck. But it wasn't anything special.
Well, look, all random encounter tables are unique. They're different. And I also believe that all of them are inherently flawed. The concept of a random table, period, is a bit problematic when it comes to actually DMing the game the way that I like to DM it, which is very planned out. There's a purpose behind it, right? So
yeah,
when we are looking at building a random table, there are a lot of things to keep in mind. And I build lots and lots and lots of random tables because I like to, in my head, I call them not so random tables because I put a lot of planning into them, and there's a reason behind everything on the list. And that's the number one key. If you don't take away anything else from this episode, it is you have to have logic behind it. And most people struggle with random tables and creating them, or they make them lopsided because there's no real cohesion, right? So you need to understand the reason behind why you are building this random table and what the purpose is that it is going to serve within your campaign. I very famously have random tables that are based on location as well. So like my random table will be different for an urban setting versus, a coastal setting versus an underwater setting.
Yeah.
Right? And that kind of makes sense. But when you look at your map, and because we've built your kingdom out, right? So in theory, at this point in your campaign prep, you will have your main city that you're focused on and your kingdom that you're focused on. And while it makes sense that you're going to do a bunch of coastal stuff, so that'll be different random encounters, and there'll be stuff in the city and whatnot. When you get into the kingdom, when you're doing overland travel and you're passing through different regions, there may be 4 or 5 different forest regions, but they should all feel very different.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where people lean on their random encounters to fill in those blanks. But it doesn't actually do a good enough job, because what they end up doing is simply just running random forest encounters off of the same table over and over again, and they're all combat, right? Most of the random encounter tables that we get out of the published books are 18 out of 20 options are combat, right?
Yeah.
And so that's not enough, because how many times can you run across 3 kobolds, 7 kobolds, 4 kobolds, and a donkey, right? Like, are we just doing kobold tables? Because sometimes you're going to land on that, right? Because the other thing about it is you can't control the dice, right?
No.
Your guys may end up, if you've got 3 options on a D20 table that are kobolds or goblins or whatever, your guys may just land on those options over and over and over again. And while that does kind of handcuff you for a moment, it's also a bit of an opportunity, right? Because now you have a consistent theme or plot points that are coming up here, because as far as they're concerned, you built this in a specific way for a reason. Like, your players will see, oh my God, there's lots of goblins here, right? This must be the Goblin Woods. Fine, great. This is the Goblin Woods. But now you need to pull the goblins off of your table before you go to the next forest, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to be aware of the reasons why we're building it. We also have to be aware of intensity, and that's another thing that I do, is I tend to build it by tier as well. My players are currently in tier 2, so I have tier 2 tables for them. I don't have tier 3 or tier 4 tables. And the other thing that I want to point out, and this is really important, is the reason that we like to play on random tables is so that we can roll more dice. But I always let my players roll the dice. I don't roll
Yeah.
dice on my random encounters, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I've done the same forever, even if I use like pre-made random tables from the books. As always the players, because then the
Right.
other players could blame themselves and not me.
Yeah, it does feel good to go, ooh, you rolled
Yeah.
this one. But if you're going to do that, then we have to follow the same concept of 20 is best, one is worst, right?
Yes.
So if we're doing things, for example, like crit tables, which I don't recommend most people use. I use them, but I, again, have well over almost 2 decades of DMing experience now.
Yes,
And
exactly.
and you've got to be fast on your feet with this because crit tables will fuck your world up pretty quickly. Coming up with 20 different outcomes means that you're going to have a large, and if you want them to be impactful, you're going to have a large scope of influence here, where some things are very mundane and some things are very, very impactful. And the more the players roll dice, the more impactful they're going to be with their shit. And so if it's crit table where they get bonuses, the best bonuses should be 20, 19,
Yes.
18, right? And the most mundane ones should be 3, 2, 1, right?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, on my crit table, the 1 is critical as normal, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side of things, if it's a crit fail table or a botch table or a failure table, whatever people want to call it, where they've rolled a natural 1 on an attack, then you need to come up with the fact that 20 is the best outcome still. So 20 for me is you take damage as normal, or like nothing
Yeah.
happens, right? So whereas the 1 is DM fuckery. So
Yeah, exactly.
no, that's literally what it says on my current table. Is
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it says DM fuckery. And my players dread this. About once a tier, someone will roll this, at which point I
Yeah.
get to pull them into another room and say, all right, moving forward. And I'm going to say this because I know that Charlie's not going to listen to this episode. Megan just rolled this, and Charlie's playing a bit of a chaotic character who's
Mm.
dabbling with the idea of good or evil. What's the best way to immortality? Right? He's very tempted. And so I pulled Megan aside and I said, if you ever see his character go down the dark path, if he ever starts doing things that are questionable, you need to pull him aside and throw him against the wall and tell him to fucking stop it. And if he does it anyway, kill him.
Oh boy.
And she went, oh, fuck. Okay. Because we don't play with player versus player at our table.
Mm.
So now this is DM fuckery, right?
Yeah.
So rolling a 1 on a failure table should be the scariest thing that the dice can offer to you, right?
Yeah.
It also should be the hardest battle on a combat encounter table, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a 20 should be the easiest or the
Yeah.
funniest or something, right? So I do want to talk briefly about the dice that you should use when coming up with these. Everybody
Mm.
wants to make a D20 table. It is all right to make a D4 table. Just understand that each one of the options are likely to happen 25% of the time.
Yeah.
There are some times where you want something like 40 different options, right? If you're doing a great big, let's say you guys are on pirate ships for the next 10 levels, and this is a major portion of the campaign, you need more than 20 options because chances are good you're going to roll into, or you're going to roll a 12 over and over and over and over and over again, and you're just going to keep running into the same rowboat full of fish or some whatever you have on there, right? So that's going to lose its shine pretty quickly. So you want more options, but you can't just use more dice, because if you say, all right, roll 2d20s, then what you end up doing here is having 39 options and not 40.
Yeah, exactly.
And the probability is that you will be rolling a combination of those, and it's more likely that you're going to end up in the middle section there, rolling between 19 and 22, because that's the average of the dice are going to land here at these numbers, right? So the more dice that you use in a single roll, the more likely you are to hit the middle of the bell curve, which means if you want 22 options, you don't roll a number of D4s and 6s combined to get up to that. You just say, okay, I'm going to add a plus or a minus at my whim before they roll, right? So if it's going to be 22, in my head I go, they would technically have a little bit of an advantage here and not enough for me to give them actual advantage dice. So I'm just going to toss them a +2 on their roll and not tell them as I look at my table. They roll a 13, I'll bump it to a 15 because that should be a better option. Or,
Yeah.
I want to take away the top 2 options off of this, well, off of a D20 list because it doesn't make sense for those. Well, there's no D18 to roll, right? So I will just minus two
not
off.
with that, not with that mindset.
And that way, if they roll a 1 or a 2 or a 3, they'll all land on 1, right? So
Yeah.
I tend to use the plus or minus in order to actually justify where I'm rolling on the table. Or sometimes I'll see a D20 table and I'll go, hey, you guys are in a cursed land at night. Roll a D10, and they cannot roll anything above a 10, right? Even though I'm rolling on the same table.
Yeah.
So when we look at the idea of probability and how we want to use it, just remember that the more dice you use, the more likely you are to land in the middle. And so I recommend not doing that. If you have a weird number of options, like there's 17 options I came up with, make it percentile dice because that's as close to even as you're going to get. And then you can actually control how many options there are to get the best or the worst. Right. A lot of the times when I use percentile dice for random tables, 30 to 70 is one option because that's the thing that's going to happen the most often. Right. That's why nothing happens. Right. And then below 30 is going to be all the negative stuff, and above 70 is going to be all the positive stuff. Right. That is very rare. I'm manipulating the probability there based on the percentage of how often they should be rolling these numbers. But again, it's random. If you don't want it to happen, don't put it on a table. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So choosing the size of the table matters. And also having multiple entries. If you don't want to do it, like you just heard me say, like 30 to 70 is this. On a D20 table, sometimes I will just have a 7 to 10, right? You can have the same thing with multiple entries on it, right? Because I desperately need them to find a fucking horse. So 50%, all of the even number random encounters are going to be find a horse until they get one, and then they'll all go back to normal, right? Like whatever it is, I will manipulate that so that they've got a 50-50 chance until they get it, right? Instead of a 5% chance off of a D20 table. This is going to make the world feel a little bit more sensical while still being, having the illusion of being random anyway, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing that I want to mention about my tips and tricks is that it's very, very simple to increase quantities in your outcomes and the options that you provide. So if you are doing tier 1, right, and it's combat encounters, for example, you can have on a D20 table, they rolled a 4, a goblin ambushes them.
Yeah.
Right. But if they roll a 1, 3 goblins ambush them. Right. It's easy to manipulate it just by changing the quantity. Right. A lot of people don't realize that. They're trying to put in new monsters, different monsters over and over and over again. But the difference between goblin ambushers, goblin patrollers, and sleeping goblins, even just the attitude of them will tell you different things, and you will land on it in different ways, and you can control the narrative. Bugbears are lazy. I will have more sleeping bugbears than I would sleeping goblins. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you have any thoughts about this before we move on to the kinds of tables?
No, I mean, except not really. I was thinking when you said use percentile how you would do it, but you answered that just as you went. So that was really the only question I was going to have. But no, this is very straightforward. Very nice.
Good. I'm glad, because the idea of random tables is something that I see people online struggling with on a regular basis, and I go, it doesn't have to be this complicated.
I mean, you're absolutely right, but people like to complicate for themselves.
Yes, and so and it's funny because with the random tables, the less thought that you put into it, the more difficult they're going to be to use within a campaign, right? Or the less impactful they're going to be. You're not going to have as much fun with them. So putting this thought into, do I really need 20 options? Could I get away with 12? Do I want there to be a bell curve? So I make them roll 3d4 instead of 1d12, right? That kind of thing. Or would it be better to just go D12, but the middle 4 are going to be, this thing? These are ways we can manipulate our random tables, and a lot of people don't think about about that. So let's get into the different kinds of random tables, because like you said before, I gave you a list of 12. There's actually more than that, but
Yeah.
yeah. So let's jump into. I mentioned before crit tables. For most people, they don't realize that that crit tables are there to affect martial characters more than magical characters. So
Yeah.
crit tables are like an optional thing that has been carried over, been grandfathered in from previous editions. In fifth edition, it hasn't really been a thing that they promote because it's actually one of the main abuse areas for adversarial DMing in previous editions, where
Yeah.
bad things would happen and the DM would like punish you for rolling a one that is completely out of your control, right? Or
Yeah.
reward different people in different ways because it was very vague in the in like the success and the actual critical. So I just want to point out here, crit tables, because they affect magical like magic casters, spellcasters differently than they affect martial characters. I always have two tables, one for the martials and one for the magic.
Oh.
And I do this because martial characters roll d20s to hit. They will roll lots of them.
Yeah.
Spellcasters force you to make saves 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Which means they're rolling d20s far fewer times. So, with that in mind, that means that the martial is going to be far more likely to pop off. And as a matter of fact, at my own table, I will have the martial crit table activate about 8 to 10 times more often than my spellcaster table.
Yeah.
That's in tier 2. It will be even less the higher up I go, because you're doing things like forcing more saves or affecting the terrain, or the more tools that you have, the less likely it is that you're just going to go disintegrate over and over, and over, right? So and while fireball is still a great spell, you think about it, it forces saves, right?
Yeah.
Counterspell, fly, charm, friends, they're all like, none of this is rolling a d20. And
No.
so when I build my random tables, I actually have the martial stuff be a little bit easier on the players and a little bit like more impactful within the encounter, right? I'm going to give them things like,
Right.
hey, on your next roll you get advantage, or you can disengage for free on this turn, or you call out to one of your allies and they get to make an additional attack. These are little things that happen, right? They are encounter level. But the magical crit table is going to be bigger things, more impactful, because A, it's magic, it should be more impactful, but also
True.
B, we're going to see it less often. So it's going to be your firebolt hits this, like you crit, it actually hits all of the enemies on the battlefield as you explode with firebolts, right? It's these kind of bigger, more impactful situations, or something that's going to be outside of the encounter, like regain a spell slot, right? So crit tables, when we look at them, we also have to keep in mind that with the fail tables as well, again, marshals are going to fail more often. So it should be more mundane encounter-based things. Like I think they'll rolling a 1 on a fail table, or is always DM fuckery, but rolling a 2 on a table is going to be a level of exhaustion. That fucking hurts, but it's just 1. But a level 2 on a magic fail table for me will be lose all your spell slots, which will just force a rest when you don't want it, or make you completely ineffective for the next little while, because we don't roll it often and it is magic, and magic should act in weird ways. Now, that is a little extreme, may not be for everybody, but I do like weighing the level of importance in the favor of the martial characters, where these things are going to happen more and more often, and so they're going to just be more effective more of the time. For magic users, though, there should come a bit more risk, because I don't think magic is dangerous enough in D&D.
No, it doesn't feel like it. Like, because you're absolutely right. You don't roll d20s a lot as a spellcaster, and I would like now to have that just crit, like fail tables, especially. That sounds like fun.
Well, I'd
have to talk to my players, obviously. I have to talk to my players first, but yeah.
My players actually, like, they love to groan and rant and bitch about it at the table, but I think that if we got rid of it, they would like the game would feel lessened somehow. At this point,
Yeah.
they've worked with it. Also, I want to point out, at no point does for me does a crit table affect hit points ever.
Mm.
No one should end up on death saves because they have rolled a 2 on a crit table.
Right.
Right. That's insane to me. No one should have temporary hit points like from a magical source off of a martial success table, right?
No,
If it's if it's a magic one, sure, go nuts, crazy.
Yeah.
Magic shit happens. So anyway, crit tables are a lot of fun to use, but you do have to remember that in theory, off a D20, you will be using these tables 10% of the time.
Yeah.
Over the span of a campaign. You probably won't be doing that necessarily in the span of a single encounter, but
No.
for probability's sake, 10% of the attack rolls should have one of these tables coming up. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't need a full D20 to go a full giant scope of really bad to really good. Maybe you keep it a D12 or a D10 or a D8, just so that there's a little extra flavor there, something that is predictable for the players to like, oh, I like my players at this point are almost at the point where they can crit and they go, oh God, I hope I get a 14. That would be really useful in this situation, right?
Yeah.
Because I also don't hide the crit tables from them. I let them see it, right?
Right.
I give them the crit table at the beginning of the campaign so that they can agree on all of the shit ahead of time. And I will update it again around halfway through the campaign and let them all agree on it again. But in the moment, I don't want them figuring it out. I want them or I don't want them to just be able to see it. I want them to figure it out over time because it's more fun. It's more impactful when they're like, oh, I crit, I rolled an 8. What happens, right? Instead of them going to a piece of paper, right?
Right.
It just lets me narrate it and it keeps it more fun at the table.
Yeah, exactly.
The next kind of random table that we have are NPC tables. I have thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
I don't like NPC tables as a general rule because I want to make my NPCs ahead of time. If I have an NPC table, because I'm looking for who's this random shopkeep. If that's what it is, then I will have created 20 NPCs to find out which one of them pops up here. And if I'm putting that much fucking effort into it, I will choose the right one for this shop.
Yeah.
So when you do want to use NPC tables for random generation, generalities is key, right? It should be thing like old man, young woman, hooded cloak, hooded figure with a secret, shit like that, right? So that at any point, if you're in the Elven Kingdom, you're not randomly bringing in a Goliath barbarian, right?
No, yeah. Make it make sense.
Exactly. So you want to go broad with them, but still, that doesn't help you come up with a name or any other details or a motivation. So, like, you're still doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So why did I even bother with the NPC table in the first place, except for just a little bit of inspiration? And if that's the case, I will do my prep ahead of time. So
I joked with my players that I would just pull a Nurse Joy from Pokemon with all of the bartenders and general store owners. They're all just very distantly related cousins, but they all look exactly the same.
I too am John Barman. I am here
exactly.
to serve you beer. Yeah.
It is so tempting.
It turns out it's the same doppelganger that's been following the party. They're just not good at it. Right? They can only do one form. So. The next thing that I want to bring up as far as random tables goes is the idea of loot tables. I have spoken in the past about the fact that my favorite loot tables in existence in 5th edition are created by Lady Tiefling. You can find her on Instagram and then follow the links and stuff in her bio to get access to stuff. I think she's either published or publishing a book. I haven't looked in on this in a while. She's fucking amazing.
Absolutely. I remember checking her out because you shouted her out. And turns out I had been following her for fucking years without knowing it.
But she does. I don't even know if she knows that this podcast exists. I think we gave her on like episode 4, like way back when we were shouting out like random Instagrams all of the time. And
I remember that.
We fucking stopped doing that pretty quick. But no, she is one of the ones that was consistently creating free. I want to say D8 to D12 loot tables for you to be able to, when you loot this creature or this kind of NPC, this is what you'll find. And a
Yeah.
lot of it is very mundane shit, but it is details and world building that you wouldn't have otherwise, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. My big thing about creating loot tables myself is, again, make it make sense. The loot
Yeah.
tables should be based on the person that you are robbing. One of the things that I like to do is create a D100 table. So I'm rolling, so they are rolling percentile dice to see what they find, but I'm only doing 10% of it at a time. So they will roll a D10 to find out what they want, and I'm looking at my D100 table. And because it's goblins and they're low level, I'm going to glance at the table and go, okay, they're rolling between 12 and 21,
Yeah.
right? Those are my 10 options. They're going to roll a d10. I will count up. They rolled a 7, right? I started at 12. Okay, so the 16th option. For those of you going, this math doesn't work out. 12 is the first one, so trust me, this works out. So so when they actually roll that, I say, okay, you would get this. When they go to loot a Sphinx, they're going to be secretly rolling up in the 70s, right? When they Dragon Horde, everybody roll 3d10s, and each one of the first round will all be between 30 and 39. The second round will all be between 68 and 77, and the last round will all be between 91 and 100, right? So so I can actually control the amount of loot that they're getting, and I can go everything from garbage to mundane items to magical trinkets, and then I can spell scrolls and potions, and I can work my way up, and I can control 100 items that are likely to be found in this area or in this tier of play as well, right? So it's very, very tempting in low levels to give out loot that is high powered or cursed or fun like that, because we can't hold back, right? We as DMs want to give presents. Don't put it on the table. You're in tier 2. At best, there should be a +2 weapon, a +2 shield, or whatever the second level of healing potion is. Like, you don't need to put +7 items on your table. Just don't fucking do that, right? And you are less likely to do that if you are sitting down ahead of time at your computer going, do they fucking deserve the Sun Sword at level 1?
Yeah, do they deserve it in this Curse of Strahd campaign?
Yeah. So again, I said before that you need to have a reason behind everything. Loot tables especially.
Yeah.
So encounter tables are probably the most popular ones that people roll on, right? And it tends to be combat related. I spoke earlier about the fact that I always tie it into whatever the environment is that everyone's in. That doesn't mean exploration. It just means that the environment is going to kind of dictate the feel and the theme, right?
Yeah.
So the 6 different kinds of combat encounters that I have, and I think I talked about this in a previous episode at some point, is combat encounters, which are pretty straightforward. That's the ones you get standard, right? Remember to tie it to your tier, and I always try to look at whatever the CR or whatever level my players are at. I will give a CR, for example, they're in tier 2, which is levels 5 to 10 in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Which means if they roll a 1 on a combat encounter, a CR 12 creature will show up. I always add 2 to the maximum level in this tier, because shit should be scary. They should have to run and hide sometimes. Keeps the world real, right? The next one, of course, is exploration. Exploration is tricky because your players are going to sit there for the first few times that you do this and go, what the fuck? Why do I care? Can I interact with this? But it can be things like it suddenly starts to rain even though it's a clear sky. You come across a watering hole. There is a large tree with a bunch of delicious fruit. It is not poisonous. Lower on the list, there's a large tree with delicious fruit. It is poisonous. So there will be different things that, like a dryad grove if we're in a forest. And if you take a short rest here, you'll get the benefits of a long rest. Right, that would be one of the 18 plus things that you would find on one of my kind of encounters, one of my kind of tables. So exploration can be really interesting. It gives the players an opportunity to interact with the world somehow, but it should not affect their hit points in a negative way.
No.
It can affect their gear, their level of exhaustion, their mounts, their NPCs, their attitude, the speed at which they're traveling. All that shit is up for grabs, but don't fuck with their hit points.
No.
So
Not a good place to start.
no, not so much. I have actually broken this up. You'll see in our notes that this one goes down a little bit lower. There are two other kinds of this. One is items, and the other is omens. So the concept of rolling items on an encounter table is not the same thing as loot. Loot is stuff that you take off of a body that you have killed. But these are going to be random items and things that exist in the world that you can interact with. Sometimes you're able to take it. You will just find a discarded adventurer's backpack that has an explorer's kit in it and an additional 50 feet of rope. Sure, that's on the table. But there will also be just objects and items, like a broken wagon that's far beyond disrepair. It gives them the opportunity to explore it, and then they may find something, and now I'll roll on my loot table, right? If their investigation is high enough. These are not auto gets necessarily. One of the things that I like to put on it are things like an old cracked altar out in the middle of the wasteland somewhere at the top of a cliff. There would have been some sort of magical ritual done here. The altar is blood-stained. Chances are it's evil. If you dig around and figure it out, you'll realize that this area is cursed. It's desecrated land. It's not a good idea to have a short rest here, right?
Yeah.
So these are just things like objects and items to find out in the world. This is one of the trickiest lists to come up with because you don't want to find that altar 3 times. Then it doesn't feel real, right?
Yeah.
Or how many discarded backpacks can you get? So
I mean, depends on where you're traveling, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, right? And it does depend on where you're traveling. If you keep running across watering holes, which is something I do, I tend to put watering holes or roadside taverns roughly 10 hours apart down the road. It makes sense that these things would exist.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're going to find shit along the road. But when you're out in the middle of the wilderness, when you're exploring the elemental plane of fire, you're probably not finding just an abandoned campsite.
You're probably also not finding a watering hole.
Probably not. Although fire water, you could get drunk. It's just a hole full of vodka.
Yeah, absolutely. But like when you find disregarded backpacks, I mean, you're absolutely right. How many are you gonna find? But then, let's say you're in like the mountains. Let's say it isn't disregarded, but just fucking lost in a blizzard. Like then it's like you said. Then you can put the narrative on it. Like, because I think getting a backpack lost and disregarding a backpack should look differently.
Yes.
It's like disregarding one is just the stuff might be a little thrown around, but a lost backpack is maybe a bit. I mean, it's not where it's supposed to be, but it's a bit neater.
Yeah,
maybe.
I look at it like this: when it comes to exploration encounters, if you're lost on the side of a mountain in a blizzard, then things that you're going to find there will be, falling ice. There will be tracks that are still relatively fresh that head in a certain direction, but the blizzard will be covering them quickly. There'll be a shallow cave that if you can roll a high enough survival check, you'll be able to create a little bit of fire to get a little bit of warmth for a short period of time, but you will not be able to get a long rest here. Like, it'll be shit like that. Whereas items are going to be things like you're stumbling around the side of the mountain and you come across a rope dangling down, blowing in the wind. When you pull on it, it's attached solidly to something above that you can't see in the blizzard. And so you are able to scale up to find out what the next thing is, right? Items should be things that you can run across. One of the things that I put in items is corpses, because remember, corpses are objects in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So corpses give us all sorts of opportunities to then find loot, to find clues, to get further gear, to figure out what kind of enemies are in the region, to have an encounter with undead, right? Corpses are a great opportunity. But I will keep it very vague when I put it on my items list, because I don't make multiple items lists based on the different environments. I only do it based on tier, so that they will run into different corpses of different in different scenarios depending on where they are, right?
Right.
When and the other thing I mentioned before was also omens. Omens are things that you don't interact with necessarily um, from like a agency standpoint. They are things that you react to. There are three crows standing on the path in front of you. All three of them are perfectly still and staring at the druid. As he steps closer, it sounds like they say, and then you say whatever word is going to be important to your campaign, and then they take off flying, disappearing into the woods to the left. Shit like that, right? You notice that for just a brief moment, the thunder clouds above you part, and a ray of sunshine comes down and illuminates something in the distance about 3 miles away off to your right. And then suddenly the moment is over.
Yeah.
Right. These are going to be ways for people to interact with the environment in other ways. I want to talk very, very quickly about role-playing encounters as well, because we did combat exploration. I'm going to backtrack to role-playing. I separate it. There's the allies, which are the people you're traveling with. This can either be NPCs or players. If they roll on the encounter table and they're taking a watch together, and I roll on my allies table, someone tells someone a secret.
Yeah.
I will then turn to them and say, hey, this is an opportunity for one of you to tell someone else something that they don't know about your character, right? It just incorporates role playing. However, if it's with an NPC, I will always have the NPC initiate, right? So,
right.
And it can be anything from tell a secret, give a gift, talk about a dream they had, express how they're concerned about something, talk about the glory of the upcoming battle, or I really wish we'd gone this route instead of the one we're on right now because it's been dangerous. I still miss so-and-so who died 3 sessions ago. Shit like that, right?
Yeah.
And then for strangers are everything from hostile strangers to friendly strangers. I tend to just have them be people that you run into out in the world. A lot of traveling merchants, a lot of relocating families, a lot of hunters and gatherers that are just out in the woods and they know where safety is nearby. Sometimes they're just suspicious. They narrow their eyes, they back away, they don't want anything to do with you, right? And I never ever put a gender or race or species or anything else or age on them. I want to control that in the moment based on the narrative, but I will add an attitude, right?
Yeah, of course.
So once you've done that, the last thing, of course, to do is I always just have a random dynamic encounters option, right? So every once in a while, I will say, hey, you know what? Roll 2 d20s, and then I will just jam two encounters together to see what happens. That's if I need to kind of drag out a little bit of the session because they blitz through the first half and I'm not prepared. Right? There'll be a couple of dynamic random encounters, but I don't do this very often.
Yeah. Would it then be you're taking 2 off the same table, or are you combining 2 tables when you do a dynamic encounter?
It'll be something like, hey, I want you to roll 2 d20s, and then I will, as they're rolling, I will look at, let's say, exploration and stranger, or combat and items, or combat and allies, stuff like this, so that when I get the 2 options, I then slam them together into the same thing. So there's an ally who has a great fear of something, and there's a combat encounter. As soon as the combat is done, this ally is going to break down crying and then tell the story of what traumatized them in the past that is very similar to the combat experience that just happened, right?
Right.
So that's why I just jam dynamic encounters together. If anybody wants to hear more about dynamic encounters, listen to a fuck ton of the campaign builder series on our Patreon.
I still have to catch up.
I know, and there's a lot of them, but they're probably the favorite thing that I'm recording these days. I just have so much fun popping off about one theme per episode, and then how to build dynamic encounters around them. It's just a lot of fun. The other thing I want to point out is that a lot of the time for combat and exploration only, and omens. I'll do this for omens as well. I will actually have different day versus night tables, but only in some locations. I'm not going to do that necessarily on a ship, right? If we end up rolling a ghost ship comes through, I will just save it till later that night and then do it then, right? But I do need different things for urban encounters or things in the woods. For exploration, I remove sight off of it and I make it things that you hear, things that are off in the distance, or things that are going to draw your attention while you're on watch. And for combat encounters, everything is more dangerous. And that can be as easy as just simply adding a modifier to the +1, +2 to the number of creatures you run into, because most things hunt at night, right?
Yeah.
That's why so many things have dark vision.
Yep.
And so I keep that in mind as well. If it is nighttime, things are more dangerous. That is why we set up a watch. It's why we light a big fire to keep things away, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
I mean, if said beast or creature has dark vision, odds are, like you said, it's a night hunter.
yeah. And that's worth pointing out for the exploration encounters as well, and the combat encounters, is a lot of that stuff is going to be based on your perception check. So it's like, I need you to roll me a d20 for what the encounter is, and then give me a perception check. Because if they roll a 9 and it's, you know, a pride of lions, but they don't see them, then nothing happens. You don't notice anything. It goes quietly for the rest of the night. But the next watch is going to be the halfling. They will pounce on the halfling, right?
Yeah.
5 minutes into the halfling's watch, before they can even roll anything, the lions, you know, 7 lions come out of the darkness, shit like that, right?
Yeah.
So
I think my still like favorite like kind of exploration encounter that you Terry and Dan, I think it was mostly Terry, it was in the first Noel episode you did ages and ages and ages ago, when you put that fucking hyena laugh into the microphone.
yeah.
And you just said, imagine this, you're at a campfire, then you just look around, hear this, and the eyes start looking back at you. That has stuck with me these years since that episode came out. It has stayed with me.
I distinctly remember the one that you're talking about and that moment at the table, because it was such a memorable piece of inspiration. I do think that was Terry. I think you're right. But the idea of like the lights, Terry looked it up on his phone for sure. But it was the idea of like the eyes lighting up in the firelight, looking at the party. So creepy.
Yeah, I absolutely look that up. I remember this was also in the fucking lycanthrope episode. What eyes glow in the dark? What color do they glow? I remember that conversation from you guys as well. Did that also stick with me? Maybe.
we talk about glowing eyes a lot. It just occurs to me now.
I mean, to be fair, when you have a torch or a campfire, and now all of a sudden you see, what was it? I think it was green or something for tigers. You're just looking at green eyes in the darkness. What the fuck are you gonna do about it? Like, realistically.
Also, it's a good way for you to have a stranger walk in, and the stranger's just as like very charming, well put together man, but you see red eyes coming towards you first, and he steps out and his eyes aren't glowing, and he's just well put together, wearing a vest and a suit and whatnot, and he sits down and puts his briefcase beside him and says, how are you interested in buying something for a one-time unique offer, just you?
Yeah.
And like the red eyes coming out of the dark, this is clearly a devil, right?
Yeah.
But well put together, and you can't see like the actual fiendish nature to them because they've shape-shifted, right? So I'm a big fan of glowing eyes. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and of course, this is also fucky when it comes to dark vision, where you can't see the color.
Yeah, it's, do you know what? I just Googled it really quickly. Do you know what human eyes? Do you know what color they throw off?
Is it red, like red light?
Yeah, it is red.
Yeah. Are you old enough to remember flash on old shitty cameras and the red eye effect that would happen?
Yeah, I am old. I'm old enough. Yeah, I'm old enough.
There you go.
Look, people on your side of the pond, or kids your side of the pond, might be old enough, but Iceland was kind of, we stayed back for a while. So I remember.
I joke about that with the east coast of Canada, where I'm like, New Brunswick is still in the 1980s. There are some parts of Newfoundland are still in the 1920s. Right, the further west you go, the more modern you become, with a couple of blips in the middle. So anyway, so watch your day versus night as well for the intensity of stuff, and for a lot of the exploration stuff, it can be the exact same things, but you just increase the DC to find out whether or not they will actually encounter it at night, right? Sometimes I will just arbitrarily say the bottom 5 options, the top 5 options, all of the even ones between 11 and 20. I will just randomly come up with rules as they're rolling, to have the opportunity which is just nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing happens, because that should be a factor on your random tables.
Yeah.
So the last thing to bring up, the last kind of random table that I've used a bunch in my games, and I want to say it was Robert I talked to about this in one of the episodes, was the idea of dreams and visions. They're a little bit different than omens. Omens are like the universe trying to pass you a message in an obscure way, right? Or gods trying to nudge you in some direction, or just a superstition that you have. Like if you're going to play an orc character, you should have tons of superstitions about stuff. Anytime that the DM's just like, oh yeah, there's a rainbow here, but it's all red, that is a sign of the bloodlust in our hearts. We must be like, there should be some things that you just lean into omens for, right? But dreams and visions are different. These are actual contact being made by some divine power that is bigger and better and above you, right? So and there are two kinds. Dreams and visions will fit into the same thing. The difference between them are visions happen while you are awake, dreams happen while you are asleep. You can still zone out and have white eyes and not be, essentially be catatonic, but it happens while you're in the middle of adventuring. Dreams happen while you're resting, right? So the two different kinds are whether or not it's an overall or it's per character. And so what I mean by that is overall, for example, dream or vision is something that's going to affect the campaign and the plot.
Yeah.
But a dream or vision that affects a character only should be far more personal, which is why if I'm going to include dreams and visions in my campaign, like we do in the campaign builder, but we only focus on the priest getting them. Only the priest gets them.
Yeah.
Because they would have to be different tables for different people.
Yeah.
So, but remember, everything is a metaphor. It all means different weird things. Dreams and visions should not be easy to necessarily put together. And you should have to have 7 or 8 of them. And you start to see trends and patterns, say, oh, I should be doing this, right? Or this is what the message is. Or now I understand the thing. You don't need a random encounter table if the dream is a flashback like Bran got in Game of Thrones, where he could suddenly just see what other people have done in history in the past, right?
Yeah.
I don't need a random table for that. Those are plot points I'm dropping at specific times.
Yeah.
But if I want to give a dream or a vision, and dreams can include nightmares, right? I tend to do a D20 table so that 1 to 10 is nightmare, 11 to 20 is dream. Or 1 to 5 is nightmare, 6 to 10 is, random, nothing, whatever dream, and then 11 to 20 is a good dream, right?
Yeah.
So, but what I do is I break it down into 4 columns, whether it's for overall and it's plot related or it's character related. Either way, I do instead of me trying to come up with you remember your childhood farm where you grew up and it's the memory of this, except now there's a monster that's lurking over your mother's shoulder, and I'm coming up with a specific dream. Coming up with fucking 20 of those, and if I've got 5 players, I got to come up with 100 of them. Fuck. I will not do that. What I will do is I will come up with 20 locations that are important to the character.
Yeah.
And I can recycle most of those locations for the next character, because I will use locations they either are trying to get to or they've been to in the campaign, right?
Yeah.
So that's column 1, is just locations, and they all get 1 or 2 words. I'm not going crazy at it. It's not, the night my farmhouse was weathering the storm and the shutters blew off. No. Just the location. Yeah. The next one is attitude. What is the attitude of the dream itself? Positive, negative. What is the emotional response I'm looking for here? And honestly, in the nightmare, it's going to be fear. All 5 of them will be fear. Maybe 1 is absolute terror, right? But it's going to be a different emotional response. Or something like you wake up feeling inspired, right? So what is the attitude that they're dealing with? The third one is what's an entity that's there? And maybe I'll roll on this a couple of times myself on the side, just so that there's a couple of people. But it should be something vague, like a loved one, someone who was in power, NPC that you've traveled with, another party member, the big bad evil guy, right? Like the last creature you killed, shit like that, right? Who is the creature in here? What's the entity? Because it might be a god, right? Or it might be the disembodied voice of the concept of hope. Like, who knows, right? But put it in there. And then finally, what's the message of it that they're trying to get across? And when my players do this, in my head, I think of it like they're casting bones, right? To get their future, right? Or to get a glimpse of their past. And so when they roll 4d20s and I get them to list them in order, doesn't matter what order they choose, just list them. And in that order, I will go through location, attitude, entity, message. And now I have a dream or a vision to give to them. But they have to write it down.
Right. Yeah.
And I can paint this big glorious picture, and the things that they write down will be the things that they have decided are most important to them, the player, in the moment, because it's the player interacting with these dreams and visions. That's what matters the most. So these random tables that I've built should all kind of point in one general direction, and I can control that. If the message is you should turn around and go back, but every other one of the messages that we've had recently have been like, you're a hero, you can do this, I believe in you, son, from like your long deceased father, shit like that. And then there's one, you need to turn back now while you still have time. Then I will change the entity to be the big bad evil guy threatening them, right? That'll just make more sense in this narrative. I'm not locked in, but it gives me somewhere to start when I begin to paint this picture for them, right? And it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense. If the big bad evil guy is sitting in the kitchen they grew up in, it doesn't matter. That's dream logic. So it's far more forgiving. So when it comes to dreams and visions and stuff, it can be a lot more fun to get into it, but it's going to be largely based on who the players are, because the entities and the locations will change slightly, right?
Right.
So that's it. That's all of my notes. I know I said I was going to talk about this for 20 minutes. I spent an hour rambling about it. But there's a lot to cover there. So
there is a lot to cover. Yeah, I don't worry.
So I asked you before we started this episode,
yes,
to pick a number of different random tables that you want to talk about. And and you gave me 3 right off the bat, but I'm sure you got more locked in. You said exploration encounters, combat encounters, and dreams. Do you want to change any of those?
I do. I kind of do. Yeah. I want to keep dreams. I actually wouldn't mind going for a magical fail table instead of, I don't know, fucking combat encounters instead of combat encounters. And maybe I think, but I like to keep the exploration encounters. That's all the change I want. That's good. That's
okay.
Good.
So what other people don't realize is that we are dealing off of a shared screen that I've got right now, so that we can keep track of it ourselves. I am going to post these tables on the Patreon when we're done. Let's dig in. Which one do you want to do first? Exploration encounters, magical failure table, or dreams table?
I want to go for the dreams.
For the dreams. All right. So the way that we're going to do this, because I said that there are 4 columns, is we're going to come up with 4 columns for it. Let me just change the size of the table here for a second. And there we go. So there are 4 columns. I'm going to add the headers. Oops, that's not right. I'm going to add the headers so that we know what we're looking at.
Yeah,
and
this is also why I could never do this. I don't, Excel or Sheets is just not my fucking thing, bro.
You either love Excel and spreadsheets and stuff, or you hate it. I have got just the absolute wrong bend in my brain that makes me love it. So
yeah, I have the other bend, so I fucking despise it.
So one of the things that I like to do immediately when I deal with dreams tables is normally we deal with D20 tables, but the likelihood of me handing out dreams, I don't want to do it every night. So I'll only do it for like every 3rd or 4th. But it's up to you how often you would hit a character with dreams. If it's going to be frequent, you need a full D20 table. If it's infrequent, it's going to be 3 to 4 long rests. That means that you're going to get one probably every 2 sessions, maybe every 3 sessions, depending on how much you're leveling. That's going to be 5 dreams per tier. You're only going to have 20 dreams total, right? But there should be consistencies. We keep coming back to the kitchen. What does that represent? I keep getting this message. What does that represent? Which means 20 options is too much.
Yeah.
Right? So I would hazard to say anything between even a D6 to a D12, any one of those 6, 8, 10, or 12 20 options is too much, right? So
Yeah.
I would say that because we want regular consistency with the dreams, we want to get some of these things over and over again, depending on the frequency, where we're only going to get probably roughly 20 dream sequences over the span of a long campaign. How many actual options do you want to come up with? D6, D8, D10? 12?
I think at 12.
Sure. All right. So do we want to make it this is a dream or a vision? Do we want to point it at the plot, or do we want to point it at a character?
In what way? As in just make it a character specific?
Yeah.
Or...
For example, are these things that the rogue is going to get visions about that matter to their backstory and what their character arc is? Or is this going to be the things that they need to know about the campaign overall, or how we can guide the party as a whole, like overall through the plots of the campaign?
That one, the latter one.
Okay, so we're going to do overall plots. Dreams table. Okay, so location, attitude, entity, and message. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's just start with locations. Why not? Let's start.
All right, there. So 12 to 1. 1 is going to be the most dangerous thing possible. Somewhere that is going to really, I spelled overall with 3 L's. Moving on. Overall.
I didn't notice it.
When it comes to locations, if they roll a 1, it should be where the final combat is going to happen.
Okay.
Right. So I just call it boss lair is a 1. 12 should be where they are the safest. Do we want to call that their guild house? Do we want to call that their parents' kitchen table? What are we going to call this?
Let's just call it space camp. Just so you know, so it's kind of broader because like they haven't really done much.
Okay. And I will pick one of the middle ones, either 6 or 7, doesn't matter which. I'm going to call it 6, which is going to just be where they are now, right?
Current location.
Yep, perfect. So with that in mind, I can do that. Let's look at the most dangerous places where they may be.
Yeah.
So these are places that they might have already visited or that they're going to visit. But let's look at your campaign, right?
Right.
Where we're dealing with the evil dragon running an elven empire, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be coastal stuff. There's orcs in the mountains. We're going to have to go into the kingdom for a bunch of intrigue and stuff later on. So what's the most dangerous thing? Like, is it the ocean? Is it the cliffs? Is it an orc encampment? Is it an elven prison, right?
The most dangerous things that they could go.
Yeah, where's the most dangerous locations they could be?
Probably the palace of the elves. So I'd say that's pretty far up there on the danger scale.
Yeah. So I'm gonna call it actually like throne room.
Yeah, throne. Yeah. That's
right. Because we gotta have like smaller places. So the boss lair is where the dragon is. Elven throne room I put at number 2. That's gonna be the second most dangerous place to be. I'm gonna grab at number 5. I'm gonna have the Fey forest around them.
Yeah.
Because we had a Fey part of the forest.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? Do we want to do something on the sea, or do we want to do something in the mountains? Or
I'd say 3 could be in the mountains, definitely.
And it doesn't have to be tied necessarily to a creature, right? So it can just be at the top of a sheer cliff.
Yeah. What? I think we named a passage there somewhere. I remember. I don't remember.
There was like a goat pass or something.
Yeah, the goat pass. Yeah. And then 4 is probably with the ocean. Yeah.
And let's say on a small boat in rough seas.
Yes.
Okay. So then that gives us 5 more options for locations that are going to be friendly locations.
Yeah.
Places they know. I do want to grab a couple things from like the backstory, but it could be generic, like where they got their training.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that. That's probably a safer place. I'm gonna put that at 10.
Yeah.
Training grounds from backstory. All right. What else? Do they have a safe haven? Do they have allies? Do we know that there are allies around that we're gonna tie them to?
I mean, hopefully the Duke of the fucking town we made, the city we made. What did I name it? Wintered. There we go.
Yeah,
Um,
let's not have it be the throne room though for them. Let's have it be
yeah,
the war room, the strategy room, or something like that.
yeah. I like that. I feel like there is a proper name for it. I don't know the name for it.
In English, it's usually just the war room.
Oh, well, there you go.
Where do we want to put that?
um, I say that's like a 9.
Okay. All right. That gives us 3 more to work with that are safe places. One, I'm just gonna put number 7 is gonna be at a tavern, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, at a roof over your head type stuff.
Exactly.
Um,
Another safe place, someone that's gonna be really safe. I mean, our characters are usually in danger. There's not a whole lot of places for rest except,
oh,
in their own encampment. But
yeah.
we can pick somewhere generic as well, and then find a way to work that in just a large room full of purple pillows. It is a dream, right?
It
But
is a dream.
but this does mean that I'm going to put a genie in their future, and the genie is going to, walk them into a extra dimensional space, which is a room full of purple pillows, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm going to let them feel pretty safe there. Room full of purple pillows. Okay, and then do we want to mine their backstory again for something else?
Yeah, I think so. For 8, something with backstory. Fuck. This would be such a so much easier if I was a player who actually completed his backstory every now and then.
What about the childhood bedroom?
Oh yeah, just childhood home, I think could be fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a dream. There's gonna have to be a specific room.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. Child dinner table, like with like childhood dinner table,
Okay.
or however you would write that
Yeah, I
in
love
English.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, does this feel appropriately scaled?
I
Boss
think so.
lair is more dangerous than Elven Throne Room, which is more
Yeah,
dangerous than Sheer Cliff. Small Boat on Rough Seas, Fey Forest, Where Are They Now? Tavern, childhood dinner table. I feel the childhood dinner table is safer than the training grounds from the backstory.
yeah. I think we could switch those.
Yeah, let's swap them. Cool. Okay, so that brings us to attitude. And of course, like I
Yeah,
said, we always do terrified. And then we'll go fear, fear,
yeah,
fear. Those are the nightmares, right? And we're
yeah,
ignoring the locations column. We're just doing our own kind
yeah. Okay.
So number 12 would be like, do we go inspiration or joy or like safety and calm and comfort? How far do we want to go? Like, what is the best that we want to get out of a dream?
I think comfort is the best. I think.
And do comfort and safety,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so the midpoint between fear and comfort and safety. Do you want to have comfort and safety just be number 12, or should it be 11 and 12?
Just number 12.
Okay.
I think.
So that gives us 7 options in the middle. And so that's going to say after fear or above fear is going to be, I've done this a number of times, so I'm just going to help you out here. Apprehension.
Yeah, that I
right?
don't even know what the fuck that means.
It's like nervous cautiousness.
Okay, yeah. See, this is why we learn every day, kids. Stay at school.
Above apprehension is going to be suspicion.
Mhm.
Above suspicion is going to be what's the word I'm looking for? Just importance. Like it's not dread, it's just this is important that you know it, right?
Yeah.
It's
Urgency, the sense of urgency.
urgency. There we go. Even better. Urgency. And that could be good or bad, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then above urgency is going to be just kind of a neutral, right?
Yeah.
We can actually add in here above neutral funny, which could just be a dream that doesn't mean a fucking thing.
Yeah.
Above funny is going to be I don't add sexy dreams to my list. I mean, you guys do you. It can be something like an omen.
Yeah.
Right. An omen or guidance. And then between omen and guidance and comfort and safety is going to be.
That's a good fucking question, man.
Peace. Just peace.
Peace. Yeah.
When it comes to entities, this is going to be the easiest one to come up with, because we're just going to have Big Bad Evil Guy as number one, Big Bad Evil Guy's Lieutenant, which I didn't spell right. Lieutenant is number two. We're going to have Monster. Doesn't matter what it is, right? Last humanoid that was killed. Right, so that's all. Like, this is all the nightmare stuff, right? But the last humanoid that was killed might be passing a positive message, right?
True. Yeah, true.
And then the childhood. See, I always include this childhood nemesis. If not, sorry, not childhood, just backstory nemesis, right? So if there was, even if it's an NPC from earlier in the campaign, that's the backstory at this point, right? So like they hated this NPC, so they're fighting them now. Fine, sure. They killed them all, right? But they're coming back to pass a message on in dreams, right?
I mean, just because it's over doesn't mean it won't haunt you.
Yeah, exactly. We've got favored god for number 12.
I like that.
We should have a celestial of favored god. I was visited by an angel. And then do we want to lean into them seeing the Big Bad Evil Guy more often, and so we just add another version of it and bump everything down the list by one? Or is it good split up the way it is?
I think it's good split up the way it is.
Okay. We can pick a family member for number 12. And then
a friend, just a friend from the backstory somewhere. Backstory friend, yeah.
Below family member at number 9, I want to add party member, somebody else in the party. Hey, the paladin is there talking to you.
Backstory, what's the word? Trainer? No, it's not the word.
Oh, mentor.
Mentor, thank you.
And then for the one that we have left, sitting at number 8, is going to be mount or pet or animal that is now speaking or guiding, right? So
I like that.
And that leaves us with message. So the message, and this is where it starts to get more complicated, because it should tie into the overall plot. So we're going to go very, very generic here. And incidentally, this is a very generic list when it comes to attitude and entity, right?
Yeah.
I would be far more specific once I know what my campaign looks like and the details of the backstory. Right.
Yeah.
So this is just fill in the blank, but this is kind of what we're looking for here, right? So the number one message should be an omen, positive omen, and the last one should be a negative omen. Keeping in mind that omens actually are impactful in the real world. That's what makes them different from just like a dream you had. Is the negative omen is like, don't do this. And if they fucking do it, bad things will happen. That was an omen, right? So
nice.
So a negative omen is a threat, and a positive omen is a promise.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm just gonna threat and promise. Actually,
if you guys keep derailing this fucking campaign.
So we've got 4 on the list now, because I wanted to make a difference. The threat should be, the big bad evil guy, not given, like, it's not an omen, but if you keep coming, I will fucking kill you, right? Like that should be a thing of the dream, right? We should have the message is one of love for number 10. It's a message of comfort for number 9. For number 3, it is a message of danger. For number 4, it is before that, it should be a message of tragedy. Danger. And then what other messages do you want to throw out there? Think about your campaign. What about an NPC's need?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And then, of course, you can choose who the NPC is. And if you ended up rolling, it was a monster that was here, you can change that at your whim to be the NPC, or have the monster represent the NPC in a specific way, like a lion begging for help for the Leonin NPC in your party, right?
Yeah, that's neat. fucking one word I can't pronounce. Tragedy. Um, sorrow, sadness, or is that
Yeah.
just that's
Yeah. Let's put in
that's not.
sadness/sorrow.
I'm just not gonna say the word that is in column 3 in the message. I just can't fucking do it, man. I can't. I'm not fucking kidding. I cannot for the life of me fucking say it.
So we have two more kind of generally neutral/positive ones, right?
Yeah.
This is where I would put like a to-do item, right? Like a quest, right?
Yeah. Quest. Yeah.
Or side quest, more specifically. Go do this thing, you will get benefits and rewards for it. And then the last message is going to be something along the lines of between side quest and comfort.
No.
No, actually, you know what's going to be is
Hmm?
dungeon master advice.
You see me come in front of you in a dream to tell you to fuck off.
No. I want you to picture this. Okay, you were standing atop a sheer cliff, full of urgency, as your pet wolf looks up at you and says, "When was the last time you dug through your backpack?" Because they
Oh
never fucking look at their gear, right?
no, they don't. They don't.
Right.
Okay, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah.
Or we really could use some more healing, shit like that, right? Now
Yeah.
I would actually paint a picture. If I'm rolling this at the table, I'm going to paint the picture of you're standing atop the sheer cliff. Down below you can see this, the wind is whipping around, and like I'm really going to paint the picture. This should
Yeah.
be like a dream, should get a ton of attention, right? Do you have a D12 nearby?
I do.
You want to roll it 4 times for me and just tell me what you roll?
Alrighty.
Let's find out what dream you
So
get.
I got a 5.
Okay.
That might be. I got a 6.
Yep.
I got a 9,
Okay.
and I got another 6.
Cool. I want to remind you that if
Yes.
instead we wanted to roll 3d4s, we're very, very likely to have every one of the rolls land between 7 and 9 because you won't be able to roll a 1 or a 2, and your average should be sitting at 8 or 9, right? Which means this is a difference between a d12 and 3d4.
Yeah.
It's something to think about as well. If we wanted to roll 3d4, if we make that choice before we build the table, then we would actually build it to roll from 3 to 12, right? And so we would only have 10 options. So that's the difference when we roll. So 5, 6, 9, 6. Fey Forest, where you are suspicious. So the Fey Forest full of oversized toadstools. There's glittering dust that shimmers in the air, slowly floating around on little eddies of wind and whatnot.
Yeah.
You get the feeling that someone is watching you, but you can't see who it is. Suddenly, out from behind the tree steps the wizard, and he looks at you and says something along the lines of, and there would be a much larger conversation that I would have here, but the point of it would be, I do believe our goblin apprentice is suffering and is in grave danger. He's level 2, and we're going up into real enemy territory soon, should he come, right? And we have this dream sequence hit once per every couple of sessions, right? And it'll be different, but it's going to slowly guide the party, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this?
It's fun. It's fun. That's fun. That's a really handy thing to have when you really want to like add something to your game, not just oh, and you guys sleep, have fun all the time.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I would almost have them roll a d20, and on a 20 they get a dream, or on a 1 they get a nightmare, right?
Right.
Or I'll make them roll a d4 if I want it to happen far more often to the cleric only, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a magical failure table and an exploration encounters table. Which one do you want to jump on next?
It's a magic failure.
Magic failure table. All right. So,
oh boy.
This is going to be where the big impactful shit happens, right?
Yeah.
The number one thing that we should look at right off the bat for the D20, the best fucking option, should be the thing that they don't want us to do, right? And that is cast multiple spells in a turn. So cast a spell of sorry, what tier should we build this for? Because that's gonna matter.
Tier 2, I think.
Tier 2. Cast a 5th level spell or lower immediately without using a spell slot.
Yeah.
That right there is fucking huge. If you rolled a 20 with another 20 directly on its heels, that's like a 1 in 400 chance, right? Like
Yeah.
you should get that, right? Or sorry, no, this is a failure table. I was making an actual crit table. There we go.
Oh yeah.
Magical failure table. 20 is nothing happens.
Yeah. They got lucky that time.
Yep. And it's like, oh, I fucked up. This could go very poorly. No, it didn't. Okay. What should our number one be? How badly do you want to punish them?
Oh, all of their spell slots are gone.
Love it.
That sounded, yeah, that was fun. Do you know how many? Well, not many times. Do you know how often I have to deal with spellcasters? No, I'm kidding. No, I mean it's just funny. Like that's just gonna force you to rest, basically.
Yeah. That is going to fucking cripple somebody. I want you to know that this is not going to get rolled very often. But when it does, it is going to fucking terrify.
Yeah, and the fact that it's not going to be rolled often is why I can sell it to my party.
I'm actually going to say are gone until you finish a short rest, so that you don't just kill an entire day. Because only warlocks get their spell slots back at a short rest, right? If it's 9 a.m. in the morning, you just burned a day, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So this is the kind of crap that I really want to drive home to anybody listening is do not punish based on the best day of the character's life. Punish based on the worst day. Imagine that they are going into their final boss battle and they roll a crit failure and then they roll a 1.
Oh boy.
You have to keep these things in mind, right? So all of this stuff should be impactful, but they should be able to have access to Hero's Feast or Catnap or something else, right? Like they're 9th level spellcasters. Someone in the party should be able to have some get out of jail free card, right? Or if I know this is a fucking option on my failure table, I might give them a potion that one person, if they drink this, can recharge as if having a long rest, within a single action. And they will get that moments before they go in. So like they're not crippled. Maybe I'll give it to them like the session before. So, this could be really useful. And then this happens. Thank God we got this potion, right?
Yeah.
So
and then or the unfortunate thing can happen, the fucking fighter or barbarian is down. He needs a fucking long rest, and then this happens. You're like, fuck.
Hey, man, that's on them. Right.
You should have planned better, guys.
And this is the thing. If we don't want it to be an option, we shouldn't put it on the table, right?
No, I want this to be an option. This is just going to be funny.
What else do you think should happen on a magical failure table?
Good question. Because I play martial classes, so actually, do you know what? Something one of them has to be roll on the wild magic table.
That's really neutral because it can go both ways.
Yeah.
Let's put that at 10 or 11. Which one?
10. And then, of course, if people have their own magic table, wild magic table, that's just going to be even funnier. But yeah, I think because magic is kind of all over the place.
Sure. Actually, some's positive, some's negative. Let's drop that. I want to say that would be in the middle, but this is a negative table, so let's put it up around 18.
Yeah.
Everything should be more negative than that, right?
Yes.
At 19, it doesn't have to be magical. It can just be your turn ends immediately.
Yeah, that's good.
Turn ends immediately, and you do not get a reaction.
I like that. So essentially, you're almost stunned.
Yes, pretty much. Let me see. Something else that is incredibly punishing is your spell targets a random ally. Maybe even yourself.
Oh boy, and then you roll it.
So I put that as a 2 because if they roll this as finger of death, then fuck.
Yeah, fuck.
But I'm gonna put it about a 5. The exact same thing except and do half damage.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because remember, anything that they would be rolling a d20 for is likely going to be damage dealing spell.
Yeah.
At 17, very close to what, like nothing happens, random table, all this shit. I would put something along the lines of, see, I don't like breaking wands or magic foci or anything else like that, uh,
No.
because I feel like it's really going to damage the ability to move forward. Like, as much as the first one, like all your spell slots are gone until the end of a short rest, is really fucking scary. If we're also going to give an item that undoes that, then what we're doing is we're just attacking their gear, right? Attacking another ally is just attacking the huge wealth of hit points that we have. By the time that we've got 9th level spells that can do damage, and anything up there, they're going to have 150 plus hit points, right? So so it shouldn't be too deadly unless somebody's already, down to 8 hit points, and then you're just going to knock them out.
Yeah.
But even then, there's death saves, there's heals, like you're high enough level that you should be okay.
Yeah.
So we've written 6 in here. And of course, this is magical. So we can look at other spells for inspiration here. Number 17 is Silence is cast
Oh,
5
send it on yourself.
away.
Fuck.
Right? All
Yeah.
this does is force you
To
to
move.
move, right? If you want to keep being a spellcaster.
So I'm going to ask you this question just so that it's done and done, because silence is a concentration spell, is it not?
Yeah.
Would they be concentrating on it for the next? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
I'm just going to put in for the next 6 rounds.
yeah. Cool.
Actually,
Just making sure.
For
Just
the
making
next,
sure.
let's say 2d4 rounds.
Yeah. I just have to make sure, because I know my players are going to argue that they could just drop the concentration if they cast it.
Yes.
It's very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we can think about this as well. Darkness is cast 5 feet away.
Oh yeah. And for the next 2d4 rounds. Yeah.
Another thing, as we're looking at this, so darkness, I think, is actually far more debilitating because it hurts more than just.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking the same.
let's move it down to let's like 8.
Yeah.
Because that's a major battlefield control thing that might cripple all of your players, especially your ranged players, right? So let's focus on, I can say around number 14 is you become the victim of the slow spell.
Oh fuck. Or would it be?
Now, I'm not going to do this for a number of rounds because there's a save involved. They get to do at the end of every turn.
Okay.
What else should be like? What other spells do you want to look at?
My mind went to hallucinatory terrain.
Oh yeah, that's pretty rough. Let's do.
Yeah.
Let's put that at a 4.
Yeah.
Hallucinatory terrain spell. Another one that I would say, like, let's restrain them. That's not so brutal for a spellcaster, but it is kind of a pain in the ass sometimes. So let's say like 12, 13, somewhere in this area.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna call it 12. And what is that? Is that the entangle spell?
I think, yeah, the entangle. Yeah, you could go into a similar vein, go rougher, and hold you become the victim of a hold person spell.
Oh, that's rough, especially because they're gonna have to start beating their own spell save DC on this stuff, which should be, it levels with them, so it should always be moderately difficult to do, right?
Yeah.
I am looking at spell lists right now. We don't want to lean entirely on spells. We want to make other shit, but let's grab a couple more, right? So
yeah.
I'm thinking kind of around 4th, 5th level kind of area that doesn't do damage, right?
A hold person doesn't do damage. Hold on, I'm saying.
All right, we'll put hold person on. Okay.
That's like a 3. That's like a 3.
No, dominate person is, but there's no one to tell them what to do. So hold.
Yeah. What are they're gonna tell themselves?
Yeah, right. They sit down and have a meeting with themselves. Fucking do better. Do fucking better.
I called you into this meeting to talk about your performance today.
Yeah, they do get
beating your own DC. I hadn't thought of that. That's so funny because they have no one else to blame, well, except me for making this table. But like,
actually, you know what? I'm not going to make this a 3 because they get a save at the end of all the turns. I'm going to make this a 9. It's just going to knock them out of initiative for a couple rounds.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to grab one more that is going to be particularly go fuck yourself. Hold on one sec. Let me include Xanathars in this conversation. There's some cool shit in there.
You can really tell what type of DM I am. My immediate thought went to power word stun.
No.
Yeah, I agree, but like
So in my last campaign, I used power word kill against
oof.
against Dan. He went up against my Coven of Hags, and I have got them supercharged. So one of them cast power word kill on him, and Charlie cast counterspell and had to roll to see if it would work.
Oh shit!
And he rolled a nat 20. So
damn.
yeah, they stepped away with it, but holy shit, did that scare the crap out of them.
Yeah, I can imagine. Speaking of counterspell, what just you just cast counterspell on yourself as a reaction? You just cancel your own fucking spell.
Well, no, they've already failed. They don't. They don't
it's true. Fuck. How funny would that be,
though? I am looking at. Oh, I know what number 3 is.
Oh yeah.
Your spell modifier.
Oh shit.
Cannot be added to rolls until the end of a short rest.
Yeah.
Which means that is going to be high, but what's lower is your proficiency modifier. So I'm going to put that at like a 7.
Yeah.
So one of the great things about making random tables is you get to kind of recycle the same idea with a little tweak. And because the players will not run into it over and over and over again, they're not going to know that you've been doing some recycling like this, right?
Yeah.
I am trying to find something here that's I'm going to hold on. I just had an evil moment.
Good.
I'm going to shift everything from 2 to 5 down to 3 to 6.
Uh-oh.
Because
can only be bad.
At number 2, you dispel magic on an item you own at the DM's discretion. Now, it is at the DM's discretion, and I want to hazard against the idea of adversarial DMing. What I'm looking for is something above a trinket and lower than something they rely on daily. I want to destroy scroll, potion, wand with only one charge that can't be recharged, shit like that, right? Like just little things. So like you just turn a wand into a stick, a scroll into a piece of parchment that has the spell written on it, but it's not actually a spell scroll, right?
Yeah.
So shit like that. This is going to be frustrating and annoying. There's nothing worse than a player handing their gear list to a DM when the DM pulls out an eraser. It just sucks. And I mean, I'm not really doing a whole lot of like mechanical kerfuckery here, not really, but it feels so fucking personal, right?
Oh my lord.
My players hate this. It is on my crit table or my failure table that you lose an item for the marshal, right? So as they're fighting, something falls out of their backpack and they don't notice, and it is just gone.
Oh fuck.
I do let them roll investigation checks afterwards when they're like searching the area, and if they roll it, they will re-find the item. But for the most part, no, it tends to be gone forever. And I have it be something that's sentimental but not mechanically impactful, or middle of the road mechanically impactful, right?
Yeah.
Or if they're like Casey and they can't roll above a 6 all fucking day, then I will just take away their lantern. The dice have punished her enough today. Magical failure table. Let's see. You summon. And number 10 is you summon a hostile quasit.
Okay. Fucking quasits.
That is not enough to really turn the tide on anything, but it is going to be full of kerfuckery, right? So
yeah, it's a nuisance.
Yeah, and this is at tier 2, right? If it was tier 4, it would be 1d4 quasits, right?
Oh fuck.
Which is hilarious. Magical failure table. We have 4 options left: 11, 13, 15, and 16.
Oh boy.
What you got?
Let's Fuck.
Let's make 11.
Yeah.
Oops. Let's make 11. All concentration checks
They're made at
are
disadvantage.
rolled with disadvantage
Yeah.
until the end of a short rest. See how we're relying on short rests, not long rests? If you
Yes.
are running a particularly
Very good.
gritty campaign, if your guys are super powered and you've given them a bunch of magic items and shit, you can change this around, but short rest tends to be the comfort space, right? And all of the spells that we're using have saves at the beginning or end of their turn, or they can just walk out of it, right? So so that does give us a little bit more wiggle room to be able to hit them with shit that is more fun. That's going to be a nuisance, but it's not going to fuck up the entire campaign, right?
No.
Hallucinatory terrain, though, is really fucky because it hits everybody.
Yeah. I know we said like no more spells, but how funny would it be you would cast polymorph on yourself?
So funny story.
Picks. Okay, you go on.
Those hags, when Power Word Kill didn't work, True Polymorph was cast as well. And Dan got turned into a voodoo doll version of himself. They then immediately went and fixed it shortly thereafter. But this was kind of a dual scenario, right? Where I had five allies and 5 enemies facing off, and the people from the sidelines could interact. But it was based, Charlie was on the sideline, and so he could cast counterspell or give buffs or debuffs, or even cast, if you cast damage, he becomes another combatant, so the enemy gets another combatant. But anytime he affects them, the hags would then have the ability to cast a spell of equal debuff or buff at the similar level. So it was up to how involved do you want to be in this duel situation.
Right.
So that was actually a lot of fun. So let's say number 16 is an enemy can cast a spell that usually takes an action as a reaction.
A reaction? Damn.
Yeah. So you've just once they are able to just say, no, fuck you, and they cast another spell. Actually, that's pretty powerful. I'm going to put that as the 13, not the 16.
Yeah.
So 15 and 16, things that are bad, but not terrible, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got one.
Okay.
I got one. You are immediately teleported to a place within 60 feet that the DM chooses.
I thought of a similar vein. I thought the blink spell, but we've done so many spells.
Yeah, I don't want to rely on the spell list anymore because we've done a bunch of it, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I also don't want to do any more magic item stuff.
No, I mean I think the one is enough.
Yeah. We could just have if we did silence and we did darkness, a little bit worse than silence, and something that you immediately cast anti-magic field centered on your robe.
I feel like that's lower than a 15, don't you think?
Yeah, but we can adjust the list, right? So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You can. I'm gonna put it. Oh no! If we want to get really fucky, yeah, let's do this. You immediately generate an anti-magic field. How big? Let's say a 10-foot.
Yeah, so it's only really fucking you over.
Yeah, a 10-foot anti-magic field centered on your spellcasting focus.
Oh, fuck, man.
For the next minute.
Oh, fuck.
No save.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. So that is not as bad as destroying a magic item's magic. It is not as bad as killing the targets or your spell targets a random ally, maybe even yourself. It's not as bad as losing your spellcasting modifier. Oh, it's worse than that because you're relying on components.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. So that was 4. So let's move it all over. How do you feel about this list, Andri?
This is a fun list.
So
this is a really fun list.
So just so that we can talk about it, because we're dealing with a failure table here, if you're going to do a crit failure table for marshals, you should be looking at things that are environmental, like your enemies can move up to half their speed toward you as a reaction or as part of their reaction, right? Enemies, you can no longer take reactions on your turn. Things like the enemy closes to you, closes the distance and immediately grapples you successfully. Shit like that. You'll notice that it's not breaking your weapon. That's fucking brutal. Do not break their weapon.
No.
And that was one of the most common things on failure tables in previous editions was your weapon breaks.
Yeah, I think what I've done, I think you get disarmed, but like it's not flung away from you. You would just have to pick it up.
I will fling it 10 feet away.
I mean, yeah, it's 10 feet maybe. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then they have to use their action to disengage to go get it, right? So that is effectively removing one of their attacks from the action economy for 1 round. That's not brutal. When you start to take a look at the action economy for failure tables, you have actually a lot of options that feel really punishing in the moment, but ultimately won't matter, right?
Yeah.
So especially because by the next combat, you're fine, right? The other thing that you'll notice I've leaned away from is levels of exhaustion.
Yeah.
I don't like doing that. I will give you disadvantage on perception checks or athletics checks or arcana checks, right, moving forward, but I'm not giving you a level of exhaustion, right?
No.
Another thing to add that you could add to this magic table or the martial table when it comes to failures is things like you can no longer receive any benefits from the bless spell, bardic inspiration, or any other similar buffs, right? So you don't get to add more dice, right, until the end of a whatever turn, right? So this is where the failure tables come in clutch. So but don't fuck over your party. That's not the point.
No.
So I know that we've run long, but do you want to dig into exploration encounters?
If you have the time, yeah, sure. I have all the time in the world.
Let's build. Let's not do a D20 table because that's a long one. Let's do a D10 table.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
So for exploration, is there anything in particular? The very first thing that we need to know is what environment are we looking at?
Let's go with. Ooh, what environment? Fuck it. Let's just go with.
It doesn't have to be. Hold on one sec. It doesn't just have to be like urban or underwater or swamp.
Right.
You can choose in a tavern, on a road, in our guild house, right? Like.
Right. Okay.
So you can be very specific. In the jail you're going to put them in, right?
Yeah. So, if that's the type of, let's say a palace. Or keep.
Palace or keep. Keep is going to be more like defense and martial. Palace will be more like role playing and regal.
I think palace. We're going to go palace.
All right. Exploration encounters. So if you're going to have a random table for any sort of environment, you do have to spend a significant amount of time there. Otherwise, don't bother. Just write up a list of places they can go and what they can find there. So these are things that do not include necessarily NPCs. Otherwise, this would be on the strangers table or the allies table, right? So, and it may lead to a role-playing opportunity or combat, but this should focus on the exploration encounter first. So when it comes to exploration encounters in a palace, 1 being the least impressive, 10 being the most impressive. Keeping in mind, if we put it on the table, it has to be an option for them to run across, right? So what should we put here?
It's the worst thing you can meet in a palace.
And the worst thing could still be something positive. It's just going to it's just going to give us an idea of what the scale is we're working with.
Gee, I haven't been in a palace before, so I couldn't really tell you.
We could do something as simple as, okay, I'm thinking about the best thing you can find in the palace is a royal secret.
Oh, yeah.
You overhear a royal secret.
The scandal the party is going to create with this fucking secret.
Oh, that's even better. Sorry, not a secret, a scandal. There we go.
No.
There a royal or noble scandal if we don't want to completely fuck over our leaders. So
really quickly, Adam, what the fuck is the difference between a scandal and a secret? I'm not, because I thought it was the same.
a secret can be a good thing, right? For example, I don't say my brother's name on the podcast because he wants.
No, yeah,
that's a secret, but it's not a scandal, right? A
Right.
scandal is inherently negative, and it should have some sort of real world impact if other people find out.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So with a secret, anything that you willfully hold back from someone is a secret. Anything that you are hiding in order to save yourself, if it gets out there, it's a scandal, right? So also scandals tend to be pointed at celebrities a lot as well, because they will lose a lot of their clout, right? There will be celebrities who like their secret is that they like their favorite animal is a dolphin. It just breaks their macho manly image, so they don't put it out there. But that's not a scandal. That's not really going to fucking impact anything in a big way. It's going to hit their tickets,
right? Yeah.
So
thank you for this.
yeah, no worries. It's good. Sometimes it's good to sit down and look at the actual definition of the word and see, is this more impactful and more important? Because you overhear a royal or noble scandal, but let's put down on 3, you overhear a secret that the servants know.
Like just some mundane stuff. Just, did you know the fucking king, he eats only with spoons or some bullshit like this?
or the royal cook has swapped out the lettuce for kale, but the king hasn't noticed. Like just dumb little shit like that, right?
That's gonna create a fucking scandal. No.
A lot of the times when it comes to secrets and scandals, the thing that I look at is going to be what would be like newspaper on the front page, or what would be just gossip. So this is actually, I'm going to put in brackets here, gossip.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time it's who's sleeping with who knows what happened to this missing person, that kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
Other exploration encounters. So we've dealt with hearing and overhearing things first. So let's try to focus on things that we can see. And one of the best places to look when we're looking for exploration is locations within the palace. What are specific things that we probably shouldn't have knowledge of yet, right? It doesn't have to be a forbidden area, but it could be, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got a good one for 9 is you find a secret passage.
Oh, yeah.
It might just connect to one of the sitting rooms, right? But you find a secret passage. This gives me as a dungeon master, because if we're building a random table, we're going to be here for a while, gives me as a dungeon master something to do now with the secret passage, right? And they've got a 10% chance of finding it. Chances are good they'll find 2 or 3. This is a path that's got tons of secret passages, right? I'm cool with
man.
this. So
it's like the most mundane thing you could see in a palace.
We're just going to explore a new room.
Yeah.
That's it. We'll just let them find a new room, whether it's a ballroom or it's a little guard room or it's whatever. They can go in there and then, they roll an investigation check to see what they find, right? This is the beginning of the encounter. It's the setup. It's not the loot they find there or the people inside of it, right?
Would you say that there are libraries inside palaces?
Oh, absolutely. Probably 2. There's probably the public one and then the private one.
Yeah. And then maybe one of them could be you find the forbidden section of either of these libraries.
I would put that at a 10. So the other one's down. You find...
No, they don't necessarily go in, but they find it.
Well, do we want to say that they find a forbidden library or private library, or do they find a piece of forbidden information?
I think a piece of forbidden information is, I think that, because then it's vaguer. You can do a lot more with that, I think.
Yeah, because then you can find the message behind the portrait or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, they'll be shit. So we are halfway done. So number 2, you find the kitchen and its helpful staff.
Okay, nice.
Suddenly getting to like rub elbows with the servants, or getting free food, or
Yeah.
drinking with the waiters, right? Like this all feels good. There's no mechanical like factor to this, but
No.
you might learn stuff.
Yeah. You might just learn the fucking gossip.
See, the overhearing stuff can also be put on the strangers table as well.
Yeah.
But this is like you overhear instead of you are told. I would put it on a role-playing table that you are told. You walk up and you hear someone say this, right? Whereas this is just something that is existing in this space and you happen to be here, right?
Yeah.
You see, I would find it far more helpful if we knew, what the palace is. I'm just trying to run the difference between like the royal palace in our kingdom, the manor / estate, because we can use this for that in our city, and then the evil elven palace. All of these things could apply to all of them. So they're general palace exploration. If I knew for a fact that I'm doing this for our kingdom's royal palace, I would be very specific about the shit that's in here. You learn this secret. You befriend or you find the quarters of this NPC, right? But because it's more general, we are going more broad spectrum on this. So we did talk about the Duke's War Room.
Yeah.
So we can have you come across a strategy room, a war room, or throne room that's empty, right? So there might be stuff to find in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The war room, strategy room, throne room, and it is empty.
So many players are going to sit on that fucking throne if they get to the throne room and it's empty.
Absolutely. And when they do, they should find the button on it that does the thing, right? And it might just open up the trap door, in the middle of the throne room. Right? There's nobody on it, but like, could you imagine?
Yeah.
What about you find access to the basement / dungeons?
Oh yeah.
This is where you're going to find secrets. This is where I'm trying to come up with where are they going to want to roll investigation checks, right?
I mean, one of them could just be you find the library, or you find the wizard's quarters or his fucking laboratory or whatever.
Oh yeah. The magical courtier.
Yeah.
The vizier.
Yeah.
Yeah, you find their empty laboratory. That's fun. Actually, I feel like that's going to be a little bit higher up.
Yeah.
The same for these. Is it more important that you find the war room or the dungeon?
I feel like it's more important if you find the war room.
Okay. And let's say, you know what? I feel like there's going to be lots of secret passages. I want to drop that lower on the list.
Yeah, I think that I can agree.
What about number 8 being you find a secret entrance? Into the palace, because that can be big, right?
Yeah.
There we go. So
all right.
Number 10 is you get a piece of forbidden information. Number 9 is a scandal. Number 8 is a secret entrance. 7 is the empty laboratory. Number 6 is the empty war room. Number 5 is the empty basement / dungeons. Number 4 is a secret passage. Number 3 is a secret that the servants know. Number 2 is you find the kitchen and its helpful staff. And number 1 is you find just a new room that you didn't know, right? So whether it's guest quarters or a sitting room or the ballroom or whatever, you're still gonna be able to find stuff in there, right?
Yeah, the servants' chambers or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So before we wrap this up,
yes,
which one do you think is your favorite of the tables that we've done so far?
This is such a hard decision. I think the dreams is actually my favorite. I really like the dream table.
I think that can be a lot of fun, but it is going to rely on you as a dungeon master being able to improv and riff on the moment, right?
Oh, that's my jam. There we go.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's built for some people. I get it. I am all about this kind of shit. As a matter of fact, half the time when you hear Casey or Megan or Dan or someone on the podcast say, yeah, one time Adam did this. It was really cool when I'm just reacting. I'm just riffing on their shit. And like, for example, 2 sessions ago, Charlie and Megan were doing their own side thing. There was nobody else there. It was just them. I'd split the party 4 ways. And so the 2 of them were together, and they went to a market. They found a fortune teller. They got their fortunes read. I pulled out the Book of Many Things and the Deck of Many Things because I got the deluxe box. And there's a way to actually come up with encounters and scenarios and to use it to read a fortune like it's a tarot reading. And so I did that for each of them.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea it was going to come up. They randomly drew cards. And so I flipped cards, and then I told them kind of what the definition was. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. Now I'm taking a 4-month break because I've got the wedding coming up.
Oh, yeah.
You better believe I'm going to be sitting on an airplane going, how the fuck do I turn this into, right?
Yeah.
And working it into my campaign, right? So, so the dreams table is going to be a part of that. Like, all right, I've given them 7 different tragedy dreams. They just keep rolling it.
Fuck.
All right.
How many NPCs am I gonna fucking kill?
Yeah, exactly, right. Like, and so that the part of the thing that I say, hey, write it down, make sure they write it down, is because every time they level, ask for a copy of the dreams that they've gotten. Ask for a copy of the pages. Take a picture with your phone and send it to me, so that I can see the overall trend and I will know what that means moving forward. It'll also let me change what's on the dreams table in the next tier, the next level, right? So
I have to keep some of these fucking NPCs alive.
right? So anyway, thinking about it like that, as plans for the future as well, if you use them as omens, sometimes you can use them as memories, right? That tragedy could be the day their house burned down, but you're not standing with your parents. You're standing there as a child holding the hand of a big bad evil guy, and he looks down and looks at you and says, "You deserved this," right? Like, like it could be
Jesus.
No, but like it could be like this. It doesn't have to be omens, right?
Yeah, of course.
So and we also wrote on it just random monster. I'm going to be using monsters that they've either recently run into or that they will run into in the near future, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe something like they have a griffin on their coat of arms. That's just going to be like, it'll be the griffin. It represents their family. That's what I need, right? So whatever. Anyway, do you have any final thoughts about this before we wrap up this episode?
No, this is fantastic. And like this formula to make random tables is actually really cool.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. I've spent a lot of time on this shit.
Yeah, like every time we do an episode, I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck is this formula? I'm like, this looks confusing. And then you go through it, I'm like, oh, I'm just a fucking dumbass.
No, you're not a dumbass. The problem is that what I'm giving you is, because nobody can see the breakdown that I send you, is like tips and tricks. And then underneath it, the not so randomness of it. And underneath that, it's just the word reasons. How are you supposed to figure that shit out?
yeah, the reasons, definitely, Adam. Yeah, sure, bud.
Right, but it's under my name, so I'm just gonna babble about it, so it's not that important. Yeah. And then when you notice it comes to like, what are you going to talk about? What decisions you're going to make? They're all full sentences, right? And I do this all the breakdowns for myself. And every once in a while, I will just add my shorthand, my notes. So like the not so randomness of it. The fourth option is multiple entries, right? So I wanted to talk about having the same thing on the list, 4 different places, right? Doesn't mean anything. But then if I get sick or I'm out of town or someone's got to step in, they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I will get angry messages during the prep being like, what the literal fuck do you mean? Or my favorite one is when Megan or Terry specifically just look at it and shrug and say, nah, I'll figure it out. And then they'll do whatever they want anyway. And it's still great content. They are writing it from their perspective, which I love, right? I love other perspectives on, shouldn't just be my voice, but hearing them go in a different way as I'm editing, I just like have to push the keyboard further away on my desk and across my arms. I listen to them. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? So don't sit there and think that you're a dumbass for this. everyone is trying to like decipher Adam's brain, and the only two people that ever get it right 100% of the time, and I don't know how they do it, are Dan and Casey. They're the only people to get it right all of the
Yeah.
time, but they don't ever ask. They just do it, and it's good. So I feel really bad for them for having to live in my brain.
I mean, I'm just going over. It's so funny. Just I have to go over all the tables, the breakdowns you send me again, just to go over and be like, wow, this is like all over the fucking place. Then it comes to my part. Wow, this is really simple.
Yeah, it's pretty funny how I like if I notice that it's under DM1 and it's in yellow, right? Then I know that I am going to put the minimum amount of effort into the breakdown and the maximum amount of effort into my notes, right?
Yeah.
But the other way around, like if it's under blue for DM2, or I don't think you've seen this green for DM3, then I've got to be very, very specific with it.
Yeah.
And honestly, breakdowns are such a pain in the ass when I'm not going to be on it, right? When it's three other hosts, I'm like, fuck, all right, here we go. I have more typing.
I have to make it fucking in depth so they understand what the fuck is supposed to happen.
Do you have any final thoughts though about the random tables? Anything that you'd like to shout out anybody or anything else? We already did a shout out for Lady Tiefling, but is there anything else?
Yeah. No, I mean, doubt that he'll ever listen to the episode, but my buddy was DMing me yesterday. He was nice. He was a very good DM yesterday. No, not particularly. It's just, it's always fun to be here. Like, if people are not a part of the Patreon, the fuck are you doing? No, kidding.
I'm gonna grab that quote. We're gonna put that audio clip on the website, so the moment you open it up, it just yells at you in your voice.
Yeah, I like that. When I'm home alone at some point and we can do this again, I can shout it like real loud for you in the mic. Absolutely ruin the audio.
Just between you and I, do you know
Yes.
what you want to do for the next episode?
I hadn't thought about it particularly, but like I'd have to just kind of go over like what I want to go over. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Because like I kind of want to branch out from this world building stuff because I feel like I'm getting a really good basis on it, and I think I can just kind of fly from here.
Good.
I'll have to let you know. Honestly, I'm not so sure. I've been working so much, and I'm going to be working so much in the next. I'm also like the reason why I didn't like think about this until I've been all over the place these past few weeks. I've been like, oh yeah, fuck, I have a thing on Saturday. I can't really book anything then. Fuck. Okay, cool, no problem.
Just pulled in a million directions, huh?
Yeah, I mean, because I just bought a new car, so I have to deal with that.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. It's very nice. And then I'm planning a trip to Japan. So I'm also thinking about that.
Okay, hold on. Two thoughts. One, what kind of car?
It is a Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's actually really nice. 2019. It's driven almost nothing for being 5 years old. It's very nice. We got it on it's a steal in Icelandic standards.
No, that's all right. My other thought is literally yesterday I was talking to Robert about recording his next one of these episodes, and he asked, what are you and Mieka doing for your honeymoon? And I gave him the long answer, which essentially sums up that we don't know yet. But he said, if you're going to Japan, hit me up. I know Robert's been to Japan, I think a couple of times, and he knows a lot of cool shit to see. So you should send him a message on Discord.
I should absolutely send him a message.
Because when I went to Vegas for my bachelor party with Dave and Sean, and it was an absolute wonderful shit show, he actually said, if you're going to Old Vegas, go down past the end of it and go check out the gigantic praying mantis that blows fire out of it. I went, what? And sure enough, there's a gigantic metal praying mantis that's out of like on top of or out of the back of like a giant like work van. It's fucking crazy. And so I had no idea until he like pointed me in that direction. So if he's got suggestions, you might want to listen to him. He's got some wild shit.
Yeah, Robert's been all over the world, huh? He's been all over the place.
Well, I mean, you do that in the Navy, I guess, right?
I suppose, yeah. That's fair.
If there's nothing else, the other thing we could do if you can't come up with anything is we could always just build more random tables. There is a list.
That's true.
So
Absolutely, we can have that at the back burner. I think
sure.
there's one thing that's been like in the back of my head that I don't know how the fuck we would even do, and it's the fucking like Fae and Feywild shit. Like what the like it's always been like in the back of my head, but I don't remember if you guys have done like Feywild or Fae stuff because it's been a while since I've listened
All right. So peek behind the
to it
curtain.
all. Yes,
We
more
we
peaks.
did an episode on the Feywild in the lore series. It was before they really published anything Feywild for fifth edition, and so we were going off of a lot of our own homebrew shit for it.
Yeah.
It's not one of the episodes that I'm proudest of. I think that we covered it. We wanted to do the Shadowfell, and then we had to do the Feywild as a response to that.
Mhm.
And it deserves another solid look at. I
Okay.
did want to spend in 2024. I wanted to do a what was it? It was a 13-part mini series on the Fae and focus the first two episodes on the Feywild, and then look at the Seelie and Unseelie courts and
Right.
a lot of the creatures that were given and Archfey and all that shit too, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, with the wedding, it just didn't work
Yeah.
its
Of
way
course. Of
into the
course.
schedule. And now I'm like, okay, 2025, I might have the room for it, but with the
Yeah.
edition change and the new monster manual coming out, I don't know what Fae creatures are going to be in there. The Fae are
Right.
pretty under supported, and if they're
Yeah.
going setting agnostic. I don't know if that means that they're not going to talk about the planes in the new Dungeon Master's Guide. But we are getting at the end of 2025 Forgotten Realms campaign, which is the Feywild is
Oh.
part of the Forgotten Realms. So, like,
Okay.
if we're getting a campaign setting, are they going to address it? Is it only going to be one page, one paragraph, or
Right.
an entire chapter? I don't know. So I don't know what the state of us dealing with the Fae in the future is. If you
Yeah.
look up our monster episodes, we have only ever covered hags. That's
Oh my God. Yeah, you're so right. Now that you say it.
And it's
Wow.
because I was holding off to do this miniseries.
Yeah.
And now we're at a weird time in D&D to do the miniseries, so I'm thinking it's
Yeah.
going to probably get pushed even further. So if you wanted to do a Feywild episode, it's not a bad time to do it because we're not going to touch it in the next little while. So
No, yeah. No, it's always been in the back of my head because like I just remember when it was close to I don't remember when. It was at some point. I just remember fucking going just reading my own fucking folklore like, yeah, these fucking things, these guys are not nice and just dumping it into the Discord. And the same with fucking
yeah,
all the fucking Christmas editions that traumatize kids. I just dumped it into the Discord. I just remember doing that at work, just like I ain't doing nothing else. I might as well just
and
tell him
it
what
is
the
always
fuck.
appreciated. You need to know that. We
Yeah.
always love it when Andri goes on a rant about something. Everyone sits back and lets you go because it's so interesting when you come up with something to rant about. But
Well, see, it's such an easy thing to rant about now because this is just a part of my work is now to rant about this because I am a guide. Which
yeah.
the funniest thing. I thought I told you guys that I'd become a guide,
No, yeah,
and I
you
was like,
didn't tell
yeah,
us, and suddenly you were like, "I'm dealing with tourists," and I'm like, "What the fuck? You
yeah,
work in a factory, dude."
yeah. Like you get tips from the Americans in like an aluminum factory.
Yeah, I was very confused. um, if do you want to sit down and do Faith for the next time we do this?
Yeah, we can definitely sit down and do Fae. I'll have to. I might actually then like go really deep into my own folklore then.
You know what would be a really cool episode would be
Mm.
if you bring your version of Fae, not the D&D Fae.
Okay.
And so you've got your monologue about the different aspects you want to talk about, and you like teach me about it. And then for the second half of the episode, we can then adapt it into stat blocks
Oh
or
yeah,
mechanics or something for D&D.
we can absolutely do that.
Do
We can
you want
absolutely do that.
do you want to add another host as well? Scott keeps saying like, "Can we add this person? Can we add this person?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever."
Oh, what? Yeah, sure. I can. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually listed
Uh.
on the description of these episodes on the Patreon. And
Oh, is it?
yeah, and he just like
Oh
has
yeah,
never
I
done it.
remember. Yeah, it isn't
Yeah.
only you, but like, but
So
it's always just been you.
so I don't know if everyone else is going to be comfortable jumping on to these kind of episodes, but
No, no,
I
yeah.
I know that we've had Dave on one. I don't know what the release order is, but Megan and Mieka are on another.
Oh
I
shit.
know that by the time that this episode comes out, I think we will be roughly releasing the episode on ocean travel and ocean like adventures at sea and stuff, where it's Terry and I, and we called in Robert for it. So like,
Oh, because he was in the Navy.
yeah, exactly, right.
Oh,
So
sick.
Yeah, sit down and think about who you want to bounce ideas off of Faye with me and someone else. So
Okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's nothing else, I'm just going to wrap the episode then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's all for our discussion on building and using random tables in D&D 5th edition. Thank you, Andri, for choosing this topic, for workshopping your homebrew, and for supporting the Patreon. And thank you for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, itsamimic.com, a store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. And make sure, if you are one of the patrons of Silver Tier or higher, to check out the Patreon to see exactly how these random tables broke down. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. How big of a list do you want to come up with today?
Sorry, I found out. I'm sorry. What did you say? Sorry. I heard most of it, but the moment you addressed me, it just.
Fair enough. Well, you're used to hearing my voice on the podcast, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.